What's up, Scyushi Squad? We are back in more Trove, and today we're going to be talking about a gunslinger. Yes, that's right. We're going to be doing a tutorial on how you're going to build this character to mid to end game. So right away, I can just tell you, why are you even watching this video? Because the gunslinger is not viable. I'm sorry. Sincerely, gunslinger sucks right now. Out of all of the classes that really needs a rework, it's the gunslinger. Unfortunately, the last official word that we got from the developers was a developer live stream maybe about a month ago, where people were asking in chat, what are you guys going to be doing about gunslinger? And they basically just said, gunslinger's fine. What are you talking about? Yeah, right, devs. Like, come on. So the reason why we knock the gunslinger so much in my videos and streams and stuff, and it's just kind of an inside joke now with the community that the gunslinger is just terrible. And the reason for that is ironically not because it's lacking damage, which is the thing that the developers are focusing on. Right? Your ultimate ability with your classroom and everything is actually still considerably powerful in the gunslinger. However, the problem is that the gunslinger is still on the old school mechanics where you use your ult and then you have 40 seconds to kill before you can do your next ult, which is not viable compared to all the other classes that have a damage uptime that lasts a lot longer and has more damage. Because the gunslinger's damage has fallen off significantly, but the main thing is the fact that the ultimate ability is what you're still reliant on, and it's just not good. But anyways, I'm still going to tell you guys how to build the gunslinger in the odd chance that you want to main the character, because maybe you think it's just so cool, maybe you don't care. And you know what? My hat goes off to you, because frankly speaking, that's how I play video games. If the character is really, really cool, I play it. Except if it's completely unviable, and then I just can't justify it. But anyways, your base attack, you know, it's okay. Your charge attack, it's dated, it's slow, it's stupid, it's sluggish. Your bounce attack where you float into the air, kind of useless. Generally speaking, this class needs an epic rework, not only just because of the fact that the damage fall off is so significant, but most of all just because the functionality of the character is just so dated. Him and the knight, they're the worst ones of the entire bunch in my opinion. But anyways, let's get into it. So the subclass ability, I would probably end up using the Knight subclass ability or Lunacy. Lunacy, of course, is less consistent. Knight subclass ability is going to give you much more movement speed, which is very, very important on the gunslinger, because the movement speed on this character just sucks at its base value. You can kind of compensate by getting as much gear as possible, but generally speaking, the movement speed is really going to suffer when compared to other classes. So low movement speed, low damage. Nobody mains gunslinger, whether we want to or not. Otherwise, you can end up using the Solarian subclass ability, because obviously that's going to end up giving you more light value, which ends up giving you more damage, and you might need that, let's face it, when you're on the gunslinger. Now, as far as your gear is concerned, ignore all the stats and all the junk that I'm rocking right now, because obviously I don't have anything useful on this guy, but generally speaking, you're going to be aiming for attack speed and movement speed. Attack speed because that's going to end up helping out the most in your ultimate, and then the movement speed just because this character is so astronomically slow. Now, if you really, really want to end up having as much damage as possible, because of the fact that when you do not have your ult, you are basically just sitting there on downtime, you might want to swap your movement speed over into crit damage on your gear, just because it'll give you that little slight edge that might help. Not really though. Now for the hidden ring effects, these are a little bit interesting, but let's talk about them, all three of them. So Berserk Slinger, when using run and gun, which is the ultimate ability, gain Berserk, increasing damage and attack speed but greatly reducing movement speed. That's going to end up being the most damage, but yeah. And then Lock and Load, dodging gives an instant charged shot, resets after a short cooldown. It's funny that that one actually says resets after a short cooldown, because almost all of the hidden ring effects and subclass abilities all have an internal cooldown. They just don't talk about it. Now, I don't know how long that duration is, unfortunately. If it's not very long, then that would probably be my #1 option for the gunslinger, just because that is going to end up being much more consistent damage, not good damage, consistent damage for dungeon to dungeon. Because with the gunslinger, you're going to use your ult in one dungeon, and then you're going to be in the next dungeon and you're still going to be on cooldown, because you don't want to be spamming Flask when you're traveling from dungeon to dungeon, because you're trying to last as long as possible before you have to resupply, right? And so that's where I would personally, if I wanted to main Gunslinger, take lock and load, just because of that dodge to get you a guaranteed charge shot, because getting a charge shot the normal method is just, yeah. However, if somebody knows in the comments what that exact cooldown time is, that would be very, I'd be very grateful just to know that bit of information, because I can't be bothered to try that out for myself. But anyways, let's move on. So after the hidden ring effects, it's going to be the banner, which the banner is, generally you can use Nitro Chaser as the average one that I always pick, just because it's so easy to get, and farming Nitro is always going to end up being a good thing because it's a really good way of making flux. However, your best option in terms of damage and so on and so forth is going to end up being the Leviathan torches. So as you kill Leviathans, you'll end up getting a daily torch that goes away on daily reset. You can combine 3 of those to a weekly torch that resets on weekly reset. And then very, very rarely you can get a perma torch, which is what everybody calls a permanent torch, which is quite literally a super rare torch that can drop from a Leviathan that is a permanent torch. It doesn't despawn, it never goes away. And then you can forge that into one of the magic damage torches that will ultimately give you more movement speed. And then for the allies, ignore cool, cute little 6-shooter sprinter. Instead, we're going to be using the Delves allies of Avier, which will end up giving you the movement speed if you're doing normal farming. Puck if you are trying to do the damage out there, just because of the fact that you're so reliant on run and gun, it's absolutely ridiculous. There's also going to end up being Prefect Penguin as a lesser alternative, and Chronomatic Cubesley if you don't have any of the Delve allies, that is, because those guys are going to end up being pretty cheap allies. Food doesn't matter, use whatever food gives you, gives you light value. And then the emblems are going to be Arcane. You pretty much have to use this because your damage sucks on Gunslinger. Trailblazing if you can sacrifice another emblem, because that'll give you the movement speed. But generally speaking, you're going to be using Unyielding for survivability, but more specifically Chromatic, because again, all of your damage is reliant on your ult, which, devs, come on, man. Otherwise, if you're really, really struggling, you can end up using Sure Strike if you really need that extra crit hit value. For the Flask, probably just Death-defying. That's just the standard one. Otherwise, Conjurer's Crucible is a good alternative. You can kind of just go through all these Flasks, but generally speaking, it's just Death-defying because of the fact that there is no such thing as surviving a hit from any enemies when you're at the end game. Especially in U11, those things hit like a truck. Now, I'm going to end up telling you guys what stats you're going to be focusing on for the mid to end game. Most of all, this is just kind of a middle ground, what you're going to be going for a base value, and then you're just going to go anything higher than that before we end up talking about the gems. So for your magic damage, you're going to be focusing on 80,000 at the base minimum. Crit hit, you want to end up having anything over 50%, and crit damage anything over 800%. Obviously, those numbers are going to get inflated the further you end up getting into the end game, but that's a pretty decent ratio to start with. Now, as far as the gems are concerned, I'm going to swap to my Shadow Hunter because I do not have a magic set of crystal gems. So, obviously the only difference between crystal gems and stellar gems and radiant gems and so on and so forth is just less stat value. That's it. So for the empowered cosmic gem, you have a couple options. Berserk Battler is going to be the best option because obviously that's going to give you more light value, more attack speed, makes it so that your ultimate is just hitting that much harder on Gunslinger. But if you really need the survivability and you're kind of doing a weirder build, you can use Vampirium because it'll give you the movement speed, which movement speed is going to be very helpful. But again, you're probably just going to be using the Knight subclass ability anyways, and you want to have as much damage as possible, and so you're pretty much just your options are very limited on Gunslinger, unfortunately. Now all of the cosmic gems are going to end up having 3 pearls into the light stat value. This is going to of course be your top priority when you're dealing with cosmic gems, and even when you're augmenting gems, this will be your top priority because these gems can be systematically used on any of your classes, outside of the fact that obviously you would have magic damage in place of physical damage and then just the crit damage. It can be difficult though. Don't worry too much if you don't have all your pearls into light. Just keep in mind that that's what you're aiming for. Now for the other empowered gems, what Volatile Velocity does, it basically gives you 40% increase to your range, which we're talking about the Gunslinger here, so generally speaking, you're going to be up close and personal with things just because of the terrible, terrible hit detection of ranged shots in Trove. So you kind of want to just get right up close and personal with enemies, which means that you have to be very careful if you have photosensitivity, because the Gunslinger's ultimate will cause seizures. I'm not even kidding. It actually gives me a headache, and I have no photosensitivity issues. Like, it's bad. So just be careful about that. There are VFX mods on PC anyways that end up negating that video effects. But again, another reason that I think the Gunslinger needs a rework on top of everything else. However, Pyrodisc is going to be the only real must-have for the Empowered Gem. Otherwise, Cubic Curtain will give you more survivability, stun burst, just so that you can constantly stun enemies and so on and so forth. You know, it's not really that big of a deal. Pyrodisc is just the mandatory one because that sweet movement speed that you get. And then, of course, you're definitely going to be going for the subclass ability, which makes it so that Run and Gun now increases your attack speed, but all shots fired are max charge shots. Wait, now decreases your attack speed. Sorry. I knew it was like that. I just read it wrong for some reason. But you guys all know what the ultimate ability is like on the Gunslinger. Now, for your lesser, you know, colored gems, what you're going to be focusing on, this is the easiest way that I can explain this, is you're going to be focusing on a 3:3 ratio. So 3 of these lesser gems are going to be as follows. 2 pearls magic damage, 1 pearl magic, or 1 pearl crit damage, no pearl crit hit. Blah, sorry, you can visually see what I'm talking about. All 3 of your empowered gems are going to end up being the exact same stat as these 3 lesser gems, okay? And then your other 3 lesser gems, because there's 6 in total, are going to end up being 2 pearls crit damage, 1 pearl magic damage, no pearl crit hit, okay? Any variation between the crit damage and the magic damage in the pearls is fine. It's not going to matter that much. Generally speaking, if you notice that you're lacking in one area, you just kind of swap one of the pearls off to another location. It really doesn't matter that much, especially when you're on the Gunslinger, frankly speaking. It's kind of sad. But there's going to end up being only minor changes if you end up changing where those pearl placements are. And then otherwise, I think that pretty much covers it for today's video. If there's anything that I ended up missing in today's video, you can let me know in the comments down below. I'll try my best to read the comment, but you know, I'm going to be very busy over this week of having these videos go out to you guys and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, I would appreciate if you would smash like, stuff for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel, and have a wonderful day, everybody.